It's 2024, and if you want to get your shit together in your business, then you need to mind the gap. Right now, you can grab an early bird bonus when you enroll in my digital bookkeeping course, Mind the Gap. Visit my link tree in the show notes to enroll, and you'll be invited to book a one-on-one virtual call with me. We're going to strategize and set you on the path for financial success in your business. This call is free for new students of Mind the Gap, and it's currently a $500 value. The course will be available starting in May 2024, but don't wait to grab your free bonus and get into our online community. Everyone who enrolls in Mind the Gap right now will receive an exclusive invitation to join our virtual community. I'm going live in there twice a month to teach you valuable financial content, answer your business questions, we're co-working together, and you'll be able to network with other entrepreneurs who are doing this work too. All of my clients are there already, and we're so excited to meet you. Visit the show notes to get enrolled in Mind the Gap today. Hey everybody, welcome to Money Through Ease. This is your host Reagan Bashara, and today I've got another guest with me, Yvonne Armenta. She is my TikTok mutual. She is an introvert who likes to do public speaking. Yvonne, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm super excited. Yeah, I love the fact that you lead with that I'm an introvert because that's something I lead with. I think it's so important to do, especially in my area, which is public speaking. A lot of people don't put those two together often in a sentence, so it's nice to hear it. It's nice to hear it from someone else and not me.
Yeah.
But thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited. I'm the founder of Chats with Yvonne, a platform where I talk about public speaking and share my experience being a public speaker of 10 plus years. And my hope is to make public speaking fun, to create spaces where you can practice public speaking in a judgment-free zone where you can just lean into who you are, the best parts of you, the all parts of you, and just have fun with public speaking because it really is fun if you give it a chance.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would love to learn more about how you've crafted this business. Are you content creating? Are you coaching people one-on-one? Tell us a little bit about like what actually your work involves.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything, I would say. I actually think that what my business actually is the public speaking part of it. So either myself as a guest speaker or hosting workshops for groups, organizations, companies, and training folks one on one, whether that be through my community that I've built on social media or even through companies themselves. They're like, hey, we'd like for you to work one on one with our teams. And so I do that. Content creation, I think, is secondary, and it's probably one of the things that if you're a business owner these days, you kind of just landed on that. You kind of
Yeah.
almost can't escape it. I feel like there are a couple people that, do well without doing it, but I also have a lot of fun creating content,
Mhm.
and it's my way of being able to, I always say this, and sometimes it's hard to monetize so much on the things that you really do love. And I
Yeah.
feel like content creation is one of the avenues that I can explore where I can be a lot more creative with it and say, hey, this is cool, fun content that I just put out there for you to get tips on public speaking, but also kind of just enjoy because it's fun for me. And my business, I guess, as far as content creation, there have been a couple partnerships, but it's primarily the public speaking part of it all.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. We should not be trying to monetize like everything that brings us joy.
Yeah.
But the allure is still there for folks to be like, oh, this is something I enjoy doing, which means I'm gonna keep coming back to it. Can I get paid for it? Like, of course we want to
Yeah.
go there, but you do have to be careful about setting time to work on certain aspects of your business, especially if part of it is content creation. Like, what are you willing to share? What are you not willing to share? And I love to hear about you self-identifying and letting us know, like right up front, and most of your videos that you're an introvert. And how does that work with you loving public speaking? How do you make that work?
Yeah, so I actually think that they're one and the same, right? Public speaking requires you to be super thoughtful in your approach and messaging. It requires you to be in tune with your audience, to be have this emotional awareness about where your audience is, where they
Mm.
want to go, where you want to go, and crafting a message that allows everybody to be seen and relate to what you're saying and lead them to action. I have always thought that, I mean, I always knew this to be true about myself. And I don't think it's until you start learning about these different labels that we attach to everything, where you're like, oh, yeah, I am an introvert. Naturally, introverts are a bit more thoughtful, a bit more reserved. You think
Mhm.
a lot more. Sometimes we
Yeah.
overthink before actually sharing, right? And
Yeah.
so I went through a phase. When I graduated college, I went right into the tech industry and I started working in the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion space, and slowly transitioned into more comms,
Mhm.
communication. So, which oddly enough, well, not oddly enough, I've always loved writing. And so when I joined as internal communications, it gave me a lot of room to be with myself, right? So writing,
Mm.
I was always I would send the emails out company wide. I would write
Yeah.
all of the company wide communications, and everybody knew it was me, but I didn't necessarily have to be in front of anybody to send those things out. I could just craft a message, send the email, be effective in my communication, and send it off, and it was great.
Yeah.
Slowly, that internal comms position began to began to manifest itself as, hey, Vaughn, can you lead our company-wide meetings, our town halls? Hey, Vaughn, can you be the host of this? Can you host that? And I also really love community, right? I love building community. I love
Yeah.
creating spaces where people feel that they can just be. Like you don't have
Hmm.
to do much just to be here, right? And have fun with it. And so I think a combination of my love for putting together events and writing just naturally lended itself to being in front of. And the reason I'm saying all of this is because I'm a social introvert in that I definitely need I love connecting with people and I love
Hmm.
being in community, but I will need more like 12 business days to fully recover from that and come
Yeah.
back a better, like more, just revived Yvonne.
Yeah.
And when I was working in the tech industry, I started public speaking when I was in high school. And so
Hmm.
this officially public speaking when I was in high school, right? This skill set I had been developing for a really long time. And at first, it started off as something that I had to do. I had to do it when I was in high school because it was part of our curriculum and we couldn't
Yeah.
graduate if we didn't do it.
Yeah.
And so I would say that before learning to love public speaking, I learned the skills to public speak. And had it not been because I was forced to do it, I probably
Mm.
wouldn't have done it at all. And it's the same thing as a lot of my roles that I've taken in the corporate world. It's like I probably wouldn't have done them if I hadn't been given some kind of opportunity and I felt like I had to say yes to it because I'm also first gen. And,
Hmm.
if you get the opportunity, why would I turn such a good opportunity down? And so the reason why I began leading with the fact that I'm an introvert is because it can be so hard for people to see that introverts and public speaking go hand in hand. That I am an introvert, but I'm also really good at getting a crowd going. I'm also really good at being energetic and on the
Hmm.
stage. And, it's just a different kind of preparation and energy that is required of me, but I can still show up in a lot of different ways. And in so many of the structures that we're a part of, introversion isn't rewarded as much as
Right.
being the louder, being bold. Like I wouldn't
Hmm.
consider myself a bold speaker. I am a speaker, right? It doesn't mean that I'm not a great speaker. It just means I don't show up as boldly oftentimes as other people do. And it doesn't
Hmm.
make me any less powerful of a public speaker. Same with any other job or any other industry that you're in. So it's always really important for me to lead with that because I hope that other people also start to see that it's not them, it's the
Yeah.
rest of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much there, and I appreciate you, sharing that connection between introversion or social introversion and like, I would definitely, not I guess, I would definitely consider myself an introvert, because I need that recovery time. Like I need my alone time to kind of recharge a little bit, and probably, I mean, I don't think that people would who know me would think that I'm introverted, but that's because when they do see me, I have had the ability to recharge and I am like outgoing and friendly and like can have a conversation with you. And um for me, it comes down to like safety and security and boundaries. And
Mhm.
really have learned this over the last 2 years of being a small business owner. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to introversion, public speaking, and then this idea of like being visible or vulnerable in front of other people. And like, where do we see that crossover? And specifically for my audience who are going to be entrepreneurs and business owners who maybe have a little bit of trouble being visible sometimes or like putting themselves out there. How can we kind of connect all those dots?
It's really hard because I, especially, well, as a public speaker, part of what makes your speech or anything, really anything, your story for your business is story, right? Like storytelling is so powerful and it's one of the ways that we show up. One of the best ways to show up is through telling your own story because no one can tell you that it's wrong. No one can tell you that you're kidding or you're lying about that because it's very much your story. It's not
Yeah.
like, it's different. Different types of public speaking require different types of techniques, right? But
Yeah.
when I think about this vulnerability piece, sometimes I've shared this before in that there are certain things that I won't share because while I may be ready to share something, the people involved in the story may not, right?
Yeah.
While a lot of what I share has to do with me being first gen Latina introverted, it involves my family, it involves my cousins,
Mhm.
it involves everybody, right? And
Yeah.
they may not be able they may not want to share certain things, and so I respect that. So that's a boundary that I've put around being transparent and vulnerable with the
Mhm.
things that I share. Now, something that I think as a public speaker, introverted public speaker that I've done is sharing just as much as being like physically being in the presence of a bunch of people is energy consuming. So is sharing so much of myself, right? You feel like you're
Mhm.
super exposed, and now it's like, well, now everybody can have an opinion on this because I allowed them into this particular space in this particular moment.
Yeah.
What has helped me see things a little bit more clearly is two things. One, self-awareness about what do I need in this moment and centering
Mm.
that. Because I'm so used to, and many of us may be used to centering everybody else, especially as business owners, aspiring entrepreneurs. You're like, what does my audience want? What thing am I solving for the people? What is my business solving for? So much of our business plan and how we create our business is around what does everybody else need and how can I serve them? How do my skill sets serve them?
Mm.
So something that I'm still learning to do is trying to, as much as I can, centering myself, not in this like I'm the center of attention kind of thing, because I'm an introvert, so that's like completely not
Yeah.
what I want, but
Yeah.
more so centering my needs as far as what do I need to be able to show up for people, right? You hear this all the time. It's around self-care, and I don't have these I don't like the hot shower with like the bath bombs and stuff. That does not work for me. Like I have tried that so many times because my mind goes everywhere. So it has become I enjoy process as much as
Mhm.
I may suck at implementing a process in the beginning. Once I have the process, I love it. Right. And so
Mhm.
one of the things has been, hey, let me implement a pre and post public speaking self care plan for myself. It's
Yeah.
like right before, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to have any meetings. I'm not going to interact with people, even if it's a networking event and I am speaking at this thing, it's a conference. I will go isolate myself. I will show up early because I like being
Yeah.
early to places, but I'll go to a room. I'll go somewhere else where I'm not surrounded by people and don't have to do too much interaction because that's helpful for me. I'll do maybe
Mhm.
a good 30 minutes of it, but I probably will need an hour to myself before going up on stage or before presenting.
Yeah.
Afterwards, same thing. I go find somewhere that feels good to me that is my own place, and that's how I take care of myself. And the other thing, right, which is similar to having a process, is really understanding what is my business supposed to be doing? Like what do I actually want to do in the world, and what is my
Mm.
business here to solve?
Mm.
And it's like, do I need to do it in the same way that other people are doing it? Sometimes people's business and like sales tactic is being super vulnerable and sharing their deepest, darkest secrets. That's not my thing. That's not my vibe, but I offer something different, right?
Yeah.
I can offer thought-provoking questions, just different perspectives, right? So that. the second part of it isn't as fleshed out, I would say, but being vulnerable isn't always sharing every single thing. It's
Mhm.
just about being present, I think, more than anything. Like, what is
Mhm.
currently going on, and how can you use your business or use your personality, like just showing up as you, which is easier said than done. But
Yeah.
those things have been really important for me, especially because public speaking is all around storytelling.
Totally. I think going back to that piece about self-awareness and vulnerability, like vulnerability as showing up and being present and having the self-awareness of like, I know when I'm being authentic because I know myself, and having that presence and then like being able to stay in the moment whenever you are in front of a bunch of eyeballs and people are perceiving you in real time. Um, can be that vulnerable place of like, okay, but like I know myself. Like I'm
Mhm.
gonna just stand here and like soak it all in, maybe do some deep breaths. I love that you shared that you have like the pre and the post plan, like a care plan. And I
I
think
have to.
it's so important to know that about yourself and to give yourself what you need in that moment. I relate to this because I've over the course of owning my own business realized how much I need buffer time around when I travel. And when I travel, I'm off. I'm not answering emails, like I'm not doing anything. I take my computer with me because like that little part of my brain is like if there's an emergency, I need to like
Mhm.
have my computer. But like the last time I went on a trip, it was like a road trip to visit some family. I brought my computer. I didn't even turn it on the entire weekend. I was very proud of myself for that.
I love that.
But I need a day before where I'm not doing work, and I need a day after I get back where I'm not doing work. And that's not even like in case of travel plans, flights being delayed. That is like for me to lay in bed and rot for 24 hours after the fact.
A
And
hundred
like
percent.
knowing yourself is so important to have that care plan in place because if you do require more recharging time, might as well give it to yourself. You're just going to prolong the kind of effects of it's like a hangover, right? A vulnerability hangover.
Yes. And you know, I think that same concept of what you're talking about can even be applied as in the stories that you share about your business, right? And the transparency and the vulnerability that you want to share. I think about it as this equivalent of when I started, or in my content creation journey, for example, I would see all of these people pop off in on TikTok and Instagram doing walking videos with like inspirational quotes uh, at the, and it was just that. It was like a 5-second clip of them walking,
Yeah.
looking really amazing and gorgeous, and an awesome quote there. And I
Yeah.
was like, I guess, should I try? Okay, that's not like my vibe, right? But I was like, but it seems to be working, so let me try it.
Mm,
And so the reason I'm saying this is because I would create content like that. And then the other content that was a little bit more me, I'm a talker, right? So I like talking and sharing ideas.
yeah.
Those would always do better for me than the ones where I was trying to do the little walk with the inspirational quote, right? And I was
Yeah.
saying the same things, they were a different format, and one format worked for someone else, but it wasn't working for me. And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that this is related somehow, but it almost probably felt like for an audience member or even just the algorithm, I don't know. They were like, "Girl, this is not you. Like, don't feel forced to do this." And same thing with
Mm,
our storytelling and how we show up vulnerably, transparently. It's you don't have to do it in the same way that someone else does it. Right? Like
hmm.
the way that you storytell or the way that you show up as a business owner does not have to be the same as anybody else. And if you try to emulate what you think is working for them, because like these people used to get thousands of views, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I guess I should try that out. I would try it out and it just would flop because I don't think I was energetically like there either. I was like, I guess I have
Mm,
to do this. So
hmm.
think about that as well when you're in your own business and how to implement that.
Yeah, totally vibing with the whole if I have to do or if I'm feeling like I'm being told that I have to do something, no one's actually telling you that you have to have B-roll, walking quotes, footage. If you feel yourself putting that pressure on yourself of like, oh, I need to do it this way because I see this person doing it and they're successful with it. I am a rebellious little like I'm not I am going to show up with a completely different energy like you're saying.
Yeah.
And speaking of like doing things unconventionally or, not even going against the flow. I recently told somebody who was worried about whether or not they should go with the flow or go against the flow. I was like, get out of the fucking river. Like, just why are you in the
Mm.
flow at all? Can
Hmm.
you tell us more? Maybe maybe being a first gen Latina comes up with this of like not doing things the conventional way when we're talking about running your business or your processes and procedures for things. Can you tell us a little bit more about like maybe what it looks like day to day in your business and how it might be different from how anybody else does it?
100%. I feel like this is something I feel like I'll say this for a lot of things, but I'm still learning this, right? Just recently I became a full-time business owner. And so
Hmm.
I've been in the corporate world, specifically in tech, for my entire career after graduating college. And so even to get to that point, there were a lot of things that I had to do by the book. I tell
Yeah.
this to my younger siblings all the time, but they're like, um, college, not everybody needs to go to college. I'm like, you're right. People don't. People don't
Yeah.
need to go to college. But for me, it was important because I didn't have the
Hmm.
network. I didn't have the connections. I had to somehow fit into the mold to get in there, to be like in the river, to then eventually be like, okay, I can swim my way out of this now on my own. I know enough. I have a foundation of what it's like to be here. And I know that
Hmm.
it doesn't align 100% with who I am and how I want to show up. And starting my own business, I'd always done public speaking on the side. And I remember telling my high school teacher, funny enough, I talked to her the other day. I remember telling her during my first keynote presentation, I think it was my senior year of high school or first year of college. I got paid for it. And I was like, dude, Abby, people can make a career out of this.
Yeah.
Like the amount of money that I just made off of these 15 minutes, I'm like, people
Hmm.
get paid to do this. I was about to say yes for free. Like I didn't even know they were going to pay me, right? She, and
Yeah.
and I remember her telling me like, yeah, people make a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, cool. So there was a seed of something there, and I kept doing
Hmm.
public speaking on the side, but like my
Hmm.
success was always going to be, oh, finish college, go do the job, go do this. And so it's been a huge process of me attempting to unlearn those things and still
Mm.
like create my business in a way that aligns with me, and at the same time trying to dissect and differentiate between the things that really are me and that feel good to me and where I'm still attempting to fit a mold, right? And
Yeah.
specifically with my business itself, I learned from other small business owners, from people like you, from people that share their experiences by asking questions. It's been so cool to feel like for so long, businesses feel like it's just people at the top and that's it, right? It's been so
Yeah.
amazing that as a small business owner, I get to lean on other people for my own success. And it's kind of like we drive each other's success. So one, that has been super important to me is having a community of people that are also that I can actually ask questions to and they're not
Mm.
gonna gatekeep kind of thing, and that they can
Yeah.
ask me questions and I'm like, yeah, dude, here, like take this, read
Yeah.
this, or send me your speech. I'll look over it type of thing.
Yeah.
But the other thing is being able to implement ways of doing public speaking, like public speaking itself. You can go on YouTube and find best practices for it, right? Like, I don't think that there's a lack of resources on how
Totally.
to be a great public speaker. What I think is lacking is meeting people where they are in their public speaking journey. And I say this all the time, but public speaking con cultura, right? Which is
Hmm.
as a Latina in first gen, there is a way, I mean, all of us, we learned through storytelling. We learned
Hmm.
through our abuelitas, our moms, like the women, men, people in our lives that have passed down knowledge, right? And so the space that I hope to create for people in their public speaking journey is one where they get the skills because those are super important, but that they see they're already the skills already existing within them because we've had such a long lineage of that, right? And so it's too on the business side of it, it's like me still trying to unlearn a lot of things and trying to differentiate between what is me and what is still
Yeah.
residue from me being in the corporate world for so long.
Hmm.
And then the other part of it is creating that space where people don't feel scared or intimidated by the quote unquote best practices of public speaking. And then they can
Yeah.
see like hand movements, gestures as something that they do all the time that are so part of who we are. So bringing our culture forward in
Mm.
public, leading with that instead of leading with the actual skill of it. Because I think I've found that with people, we love talking. People like talking. We conversate with one another all the time. We're in deep conversation and tell stories all the time. It's just when you're told, okay, be a good public speaker, you're like, what is that? And so I think
Yeah.
through my business, I hope to redefine what that even looks like for folks.
Yeah, I think like one of the things that sticks out to me is talking about bringing your culture forward into public speaking, because if we think about like what culture is, like just the definition of the word, it's like you've got a group of people and they kind of share different things. It can be food, it can be music, it can be dance, it can be language. Like language is one of the things that makes a culture. Like even in English, we have different like
Mhm.
versions of English or dialects, the same with Spanish, like most major languages in the world. If you go to different parts of the world, they even sound a little bit different. They use different words for different things. And I
Mhm.
think that's like so important to lead with the culture whenever you are communicating, because communication is everything. And there's all sorts of rules that we learned growing up while we were learning language, that we just don't have access to consciously. It's literally just part of our subconscious. It's the way we speak, it's the way we communicate without words, like body language. All of that varies so much from place to place and from group to group. And so I love that you kind of insist on bringing that forward and letting that take the spotlight, because if the whole point is to get up in front of people to connect with them, there's no better way to do that than to like show us who you are so that we can see ourselves kind of reflected back, and that in that way be engaged with what you're
Yeah. And
saying.
yeah, and like have people remain curious, right? Like I remember a couple months ago, I started reading a book and it is Mexican Gothic. And
Oh
I
my gosh,
remember
that's on my list. I have
it's
it. I need to read it.
it's so good. No spoilers at all, but what
Yeah.
I really loved about it is that there are Spanish words embedded within the book
Hmm.
that aren't translated, right? So it's like they said a word like rebozo, right?
Hmm.
Rebozo, but you may not know what a rebozo is, but because of everything else around it, you understand that it's a almost like a blanket that's meant to keep you warm type of thing,
Yeah.
right? And so I loved it because that to me is an example of what we can do with when we show up as our authentic selves in public speaking is think about all of the things that we've had to. I can't tell you how many times I've read something, how many times I've heard something, and my immediate thought is to go and Google it and say, hey, I don't know
Hmm.
what they just said. It feels like I maybe should. Let me go and Google it. And who knows, maybe that's
Yeah.
like I used to be in rooms all the time where they would make a joke about a movie or something that they grew up with. And I was like, I did not grow up with those movies. My mom didn't know that music, so I had to go and Google something and figure out what the context was so that I could
Mm.
better connect with them. And I think it's okay to allow your audience to be curious about something and maybe not, give them enough context to understand what you're saying, but then also be okay with the fact that there are going to be some folks out there that don't understand the joke that you just made because of cultural context. And obviously, there's two different sides to that, right? As a public speaker, you need to make sure that you know your audience. So if you know that your audience is not going to get it, maybe don't tell that joke. But if there's one person in there, I guess what I'm saying is our audience can work for it too. Like it's not
Mm.
always when we don't have to appease to this standard, right? We
Mm.
can, because currently there's a standard, and when you are different from it, It's going to feel uncomfortable for both you and someone else, but it doesn't mean that it can't be done, that it shouldn't continue to be done. It doesn't make your communication any less effective. It just, you're opening up a new way of communicating. You're opening up a new way of understanding one another's experiences and making the universal a little bit more complex, maybe, but just humanizing all of these things by saying, yep, I'm different. I may show up a little different. I may use a different word than you would, but that's okay. And that should be the standard.
Yeah. No, I agree. We do not need to give everything up. We can leave the audience, whether it's on the screen and we're recording a video, or if we're standing up in a room full of a bunch of people. It's I agree that we need to insist on making them work for it a little bit, or making not like breadcrumbing, but just like letting it be okay that they don't get every reference. Or like, I love to make jokes. You
Yeah.
and I talked about humor being one of my like business values, and
Mhm.
like infusing humor and everything. I'm going to make a joke. And it's okay if everybody doesn't laugh. Like, some people are going to get
Yeah.
it, and that's totally fine.
Yeah. Because then you get lost in that, especially
Yeah.
as an introvert, especially as, a lot of the women that I work with, right? A lot of the identify as Latinas, right? Identify as women Latinas. And they say to me, yeah, sometimes I would rather just not speak instead of messing up or saying something that's going to shine a light on me, right?
Mm,
And that's something that we have to go, that's something that I will always battle with that. Like I said,
yeah.
I've been in the tech industry for years, and now they're like, show up as your authentic self. And it's like, yeah, but I spent all these years trying to hide some of who I was because it was
Mm,
more palatable for you to be able to let me into these
yeah.
rooms, whether you realize it or not. And
Yeah.
so it's going to take so much work to be able to get to this point where I'm, quote, showing up as my full authentic self. Like, there's years of undoing that needs to happen. There's years of undoing from industries that need to happen as well. Like, it's not just a me thing. It's not just a us thing as individuals, but it's the entire all of the environments and that we're a part of. So it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that goes back to that kind of like safety, security, vulnerability piece about like, if I don't assimilate and give them what they like expect, or not make them have to think too hard about, wait, why don't I know what she's referencing here? Like, if you don't assimilate, you're going to be, not let into the room, and that is a very real like systemic thing. And I've seen a lot of people talk. Okay, so recently, I've seen people talking specifically about Brene Brown. And so when we think
Mm.
about public speakers, especially women in kind of like the millennial Gen X age groups, know who the fuck she is. And I've watched the TED Talks and listened to the books and seen the Netflix specials, and she's got all sorts of stuff that we can listen to her public speaking. But I saw someone recently, I think her name is Sierra on TikTok, by the way. I'll try to remember who it is, what their handle is, but specifically speaking to the fact that like the courage and the vulnerability that she pushes on everybody is actually not safe for everyone to participate
Mhm.
in or to force themselves through, and that like we're completely leaving out that intersection of it all. And it's like, I mean, I never was like a huge Brene Brown fan, but when that was pointed out to me, I was like, oh, right, yeah, like, of course it's safer for me, a white woman, to like be courageous and dare to lead and whatever
Yeah, and that's so it's so true, right? Like, I even think when I got into the tech industry, well, my very first role in the tech industry was just a phone call. So they never saw my face or anything. They didn't know
Mhm.
what I looked like, all of that. So I was like, wow, this is how they should do it everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Because then you're just listening to what I'm saying. And I'm like, public
Mhm.
speaking quite literally got me my first ever tech job. But I think the when we hear these kinds of things, like, just own your own,
Mhm.
own your story. It's like you can't you it's too simple, right?
Yeah.
It's not capturing all
So
of,
easy to do.
yeah, exactly. And even I'm not saying, right, for white women it's easy to do, right? Like, there's some level of
Yeah.
complexity that's embedded within that. it's just so important, like as an individual, to understand when we do hear these things, when we hear even motivational speakers and they say, you got this, go do this, like
Yeah.
the power is within you, right?
Yeah.
Really, really think, digest how that feels like in your
Mhm.
body. Because
Mhm.
this is why I believe so much in public speaking. Representation across public speaking needs to change, because someone that I grew up with a bunch of public speakers that I learned from because they were the only ones out there, right?
Mhm.
They were the people that I could access their videos on online. And so
Mhm.
I would definitely intake a lot of what they would say, but there was a part of me that was always like, but they haven't had the same experience that I have had. They're
Yeah.
quite literally way different. They live a completely different life. And so
Yeah.
the motivation that they can offer me, or the inspiration that they can offer me, caps at some point, because I
Mm.
can't relate to their experiences. They can't relate to mine. We haven't had the same access to things. And
Yeah.
by the way, right, like I always say this as well, is that I recognize that even my assimilation of, hey, I need to go to college, I need to do this, I need to get all these internships so that I can get into these roles.
Mm.
Whenever we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and even in representation, I always say that, yes, I'm Latina, right? But I, my Latinidad has probably not been as, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like folks in the rooms that have the ability to give us these opportunities, my Latinidad has not been as, they haven't been as intimidated by it, because I am a
Mhm.
white passing Latina, right? Like
Mhm.
I grew up going to Mexico. I'm as Mexican as it come. You could maybe ask my cousins back in Mexico. They'd be like, no, you're not Mexican. Like you're born in the US. But that I also understand that there is some privilege in that, right? And so
Mhm.
even in my business itself, when I talk about public speaking, when I work with people one-on-one, when I do these workshops, I'm so aware of that. And so I try to always position the learnings from public speaking in a way that's like, hey, I talk about public speaking con cultura, but when I say that, it really means approach the art from your direct lived experiences. Like make
Mm.
it something that is already a part of you, so that it doesn't
Yeah.
feel detached from everything that you do every day, so that it feels like it's you. Like you have the power to
Mm.
create your public speaking journey from here, from you, not from what I'm saying, even. Like I always say, take what I say, remix it, and make it your own. So I think that's super important to me to mention as well.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing that experience, and kind of like making that connection, because I think like even when it comes to representation, it's like there's no group that is monolithic either. And so even if you are bringing your specific experience and your culture and, drawing on the stories from your family that you feel compelled and willing to share, like it's so authentic and refreshing that we have people like you taking up this space in this kind of world. What am I saying? World. You're taking up the space in the space. Words.
Yeah, and equally, right? Like I think as public speakers, I'll share this because I thought it was so interesting. A couple of weeks ago, actually it was probably a couple months ago, I led a workshop on public speaking and like your toolkit, and it was for a group of women, Latina entrepreneurs. And one of them said, the reason I'd never leaned into public speaking was is because the reason I don't like public speaking is because it seems so egocentric.
Mm,
And that I think was the perfect example of one where why a lot of us won't tap into public speaking, especially as Latinas, first gen, because we consider public speaking to be one where you want the attention all on you. And
hmm.
I told her, I was like, that's amazing. Like, thank you for bringing that up,
Yeah.
because it's the exact reason why I think that we as Latinas have such a power in creating the new version of public speaking, where
Mm,
when you show up, even if it's just you on stage, when you show up, it's not just about you, it becomes about everybody else. And we have the power of reimagining what the industry of public speaking actually is. And, you know, people that are on stage, yes, they're amazing, but we also know that it really is all comes down to community. So when she said that, I was like, this is probably one of the other reasons people don't want to tap into public speaking, because when they have seen examples of incredible public speakers, they're like, oh, they're only centering themselves. They're not
Mm,
centering, and to some capacity, sometimes you have to do that. But I think hopefully, the space that we're creating around public speaking today is more of community oriented, and
mm.
individuals have amazing stories, but they form part of a collective.
Yeah, and I think like if we want to shift away from, oh, people who do public speaking just love the spotlight and they're ego driven, moving the needle from that to this person has a message that they're like, I gotta get this off my chest. I really
Mhm.
need people to hear this message, or, I have some sort of value or expertise that I want to provide to somebody because like when I relate to that with like the services that I provide, like I'm just trying to help y'all out. Okay. Like I know you're struggling. I see you. Um, so like come over here and let's, help each other out and create that community. And I think like especially if people are feeling like, this is just like, I don't want to be in the spotlight. I don't want it all to be about me, but it's what you're saying. I think your message is that it isn't really even about you. It is about who you're talking to and what your message is that you're trying to convey to them.
Exactly. It really, I've said this before, it 100% is not about me. Like I've always said this, like if I could, I would always be like the behind the scenes type of person, because I think that's more I thrive in that. Like I love when I'm able
Yeah.
to work with someone and then they go and have that speaking engagement. I'm like, oh shit, like I helped
You're
you.
like the
It's all
foam
you.
finger number one.
Yeah. And like it's all
Oh, yeah.
you, but like I was able to be a part of that process. And I
Yeah.
think at least for me, that's super important. Like, yes, of course, there are things that, especially as business owners, it's so important to be okay in the spotlight. Every once in a
Hmm.
while, I'm like, yeah, okay, I have to be so much more comfortable with it. Like, it took me a really long time. There were a lot of speaking engagements that I've done in the past. There are a lot of workshops that I led that I never even posted on my socials, that I've never even,
Yeah.
till this day, there are some things I probably should have on my website that like, I'm too humble about that. But it's not because
Yeah.
I'm like, ooh, I don't want the spotlight on me. It's more so because I'm like, oh, yeah, I forgot that I even did that because it wasn't about me in that moment,
Hmm.
right? And so it is a mind shift. It's a mind shift to be able to think that way. And at the same time, as business owners, I'm learning now, especially I've only been doing this really full time for the last like 2 or 3 months.
Mm.
And I have realized that I struggle a lot with charging people for what I have,
Mm.
like my services.
Yeah.
I in my mind, I'm like, is this a reasonable price? And I'm like, no, it is. Because I like being in the tech industry, I know how much money they spend and on
Yeah.
what. And
Yeah.
it's like, this kind of stuff is like I was like, my prices are like chump change, right? But then I'm like, I have to consider, my purpose is to make public speaking fun and accessible to everybody and their
Hmm.
mamas, right? So I'm like, I struggle a lot with how many things I do for free and how
Mm.
many
Yeah.
things I'm like, oh, I should probably actually like I need to get paid for this one, right? So it's a
Yeah.
constant struggle of saying, okay, now I'm officially, whereas before I had a little bit more freedom with that. Like I had a job, a nine to
Hmm.
five that was like, okay, yeah, sure. I'll go speak to y'all for this. It's fine. And I still do so much of that, but now I'm a little bit more aware of like, oh shit, should I wait, sorry. I have to pay rent is due. So it's hard. Like I'm like, how do people do this? Like it's really difficult to, at least for me, right? Because
Mm.
it's this transition from going from someone else is paying me and
Yeah.
I get to offer these things to my community, to now this is actually my job. Like this is what I do. This is my business. And I want to continue offering these services to my community because I truly believe in them. And
Hmm.
yet I live in a world where I have to make a living out of it. So I'm still working
Yeah.
out my business plan pricing. So if anyone has any advice, hit me up.
Yeah, I can tell you right now that you're not alone in that struggle. Like I deal with it as well. And like every single one of my clients, every entrepreneur that I know starts off, if they have a new offer or something that they want to sell, they're like, the first step is the pricing drama, and we're going to have a meltdown about it or two. But I will give you some advice, and the podcast listeners know this already, but if you are going to have anxiety or shame or guilt about the price tag, either way, you might as well pick the higher price and just make some more fucking money. Uh, that is
True, true.
that is my advice. Take it or leave it.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I mean, and I'm so also transparent with folks and like, this is probably not like the best business person type of thing, but I'm also like, if you, because I think about it this way, growing up, I had so many opportunities because people were lending a hand, or the reason for years that my mom was
Mhm.
able to put food on the table was because there are other contributors to
Yeah.
this community, right? And so I always think like, I, part of doing business differently is, yes, centering the fact that at the end of the day, this is a business. So I'm going to charge
Mhm.
the years of experience that I have. But also, I am not opposed to if someone really needs this kind of stuff. And, public speaking education is a bonus, I would say. Like you don't need it to survive in the world,
Yeah.
because you do it every day. But like if someone really wants the services, I am so willing to being like, hey, okay, cool, let's work out a payment plan. Like
Yeah.
let's do it. Like we'll get it all in order, but let's do it because again, decentering myself from the equation,
Mhm.
I have now, thankfully, I'm in a place where I'm more financially stable and I can say, hey, I'm going to invest in your courses or I'm going to invest in this service because I can and because I need it, right? Whereas someone, if I can offer a service for them and make it easier for them to access it, I'm going to do it, whether it's business best practices or not. Like it's this part of how I want to do business differently. So
Mhm.
maybe but a dumb thing to
I've been
do.
giving shit away since day one. I'm like, oh, I believe in your cause. I'll just do your shit.
Right? Yeah. Like this girl, she
You
spoke
convinced
at
me and you said zero words.
yeah, I know. No, I'm so easy to convince. It's so bad. I probably didn't even shouldn't even be admitting this, but I am really easy to convince. I also at the same time, I am very it's like nonprofits, again, this other thing, like when I work with
Exactly.
nonprofits,
Every
they're
time.
different. To me, it's different, right? To
Yeah.
me, it's just different. Like if I know you're like tech companies, mm-mm.
You could pay up
Mhm,
with
mhm.
the markup.
Yeah,
And you're
exactly.
paying for my hotel room too.
And my flight.
My Ubers.
All of it.
DoorDash. Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of like prices and how people can work with you, let us know where we can follow you and soak in all your brilliance. And if somebody out there is Latina and needs to come out of their shell and learn how to talk to other people, where can we find you?
Yeah, so you can go on chatswithyvonne.com. Yvonne is YVONNE.com and find all of my offerings on there. I do one-on-ones. If you're a part of an organization or you own an organization or a company or anything like that, and you have a team and you want to host a public speaking workshop for them, I host those as well.
Mm.
And I also have just one-off things. So if you say, hey, when I have a speech and I want your feedback on it, you can do that. I've had folks send me videos of them practicing their speech and I give them feedback on that. And one of the other ways to connect with me, obviously through all social platforms at Chats with Yvonne, but also I have my own podcast where I'm doing a speaker spotlight series every Friday. And this is an opportunity for you to come by and share who you are as a speaker. For some, the format is a little different. So for some, it's they're just starting off their speaker journey and want a place to just say what they need to say, share their story. And the way that I've organized the podcast episodes are at the very beginning, you tell me a story about who you are and just to tap into that essence of storytelling a bit more. And then we transition into an interview portion of it where I get to learn more about you. And if you have a business, if you don't, like this is completely open to anybody and everybody that wants to have a space to practice their public speaking out loud. So I would love to connect on all different platforms. If you want to be on the podcast, you can just shoot me an email at chatswithyvonne@gmail.com and I'll take it from there.
Yeah, I love that format of like 5 to 7 minutes of tell us who you are, tell us a story, and practicing public speaking in a way where like they're just speaking to you. Like other people are going to hear it eventually, but like it's just we're in our little comfy homes, everything's chill. And so you can like really practice your public speaking with Yvonne, and definitely go check her out on socials. It's super fun to watch like your half marathon journey and have a cafecito in the morning. I'm like, yes, I'm
That
sitting here with
too.
my
I
coffee
share
too.
like random, I do not follow business rules. And that's like,
Yeah.
make sure you post about your niche. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna post everything.
What's
Whoops,
that?
sorry.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
what is that? But I try to do a lot more public speaking than I do. I think recently because it's like an everyday thing, the half marathon, but I do post about my running because
Mhm.
I love being able to say anything that you like, whatever your hobby is, I can guarantee that I can connect it back to public
Yeah,
speaking and the best way for you to practice as an individual. So yeah, definitely check me out over there if you'd like.
that's excellent. And we will have all the links. I say we, it's me. I don't know why I say I'll have all the links in the show notes where you can go connect with Yvonne online. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Money Through Ease. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave a rating and review. Your feedback really does mean a lot to me. And if you're ready to take the first step towards organized finances, be sure to download my free receipt organization guide, Chaos to Calm. Visit the link in the show notes to grab your free copy now. Remember, your financial journey starts with small steps. I'm here to support you every step of the way. Until next time, this is Reagan Bashara from Money Through Ease. Stay empowered.